Hello, OPIN004. I'm here with Fred Whitty. He's been in Masonry for a while. Fred, tell us about your Masonic journey and a little bit about yourself.
Well, Michael, I started Masonry in 1982. Joined St. John's Lodge number 3, downtown Newbern.
Been there?
Shortly after joining, they asked me to be the titler. And I started there and went through every chair until I became the master in 1990. I recommend any brother go through each of the chairs. Sometimes it's a hard thing to do because they need you so badly that they push you faster. But I think that's one of the beautiful things in Masonry, that it allows you to sit there year after year, listen to what's being said before you, so you can have the opportunity to learn and listen to it and watch what happens in the lodge as you progress. And it just makes you a better person by watching and listening. After joining the lodge and becoming a Master Mason, of course, somebody was there with a petition for Scottish Rite, so I joined Scottish Rite quickly, went to a few meetings, joined the shrine, but it wasn't until 1990, the year I was master of the lodge, that I decided to join the York Rite. And it's been a great journey for me, because in the York Rite they have 3 bodies. The 3 bodies are the chapter, the council, and the commandery. Gives you an opportunity to go through the chairs in each one of those bodies and listen and to see what goes on and end up being the presiding officer. And I have found, and I'm passing it on to any new Master Mason or any Master Mason. In your first degree, you said you came to learn to subdue your passions and improve yourself in Masonry. Well, that's how you improve yourself, is through participation. You participate in the chairs, you participate in the degrees, you participate in presiding over the lodge. You participate by going out and meeting new brothers. It's a wonderful system, and I've even seen it work for young girls. My daughter was Job's Daughter, which is a Masonic group for girls. They go through the chairs until they become the honored queen, and those that I saw that became honored queens, they're all doing well today in life. It's just a fantastic system for improving yourself.
Job's Daughters. I don't think I've heard of this one.
Yes, Masonry has 3 youth groups. They have Demolay for boys, Rainbow for girls, and Job's Daughters. And Job's Daughters has a little bit stronger requirement. You have to be related to a Master Mason to become a Job's Daughter.
Yeah, I just did an interview with a gentleman who was in Demolay, and we talked about Jacques Demolay and Knights Templar and the French and the Pope, and we went into quite a bit. He told me his grandfather had to bestow the 33rd degree, but other than that, he didn't have any other connection. It was just his friends, and he got into Demolay. So the Demolay doesn't require any connection, or
I don't believe they do.
They're his grandfather, that was good enough.
They're just trying to find young men to help them improve themselves in life.
So what do they have around here still now?
Around here, Newbern was known for everything dealing with Masonry was in Newbern, but sadly, membership has declined. It's I don't want to say the interest has declined, but as we get older, we're not as strong and able to do everything that we used to do. So we have no adult leadership right now to deal with DeMolay or Rainbows or Job's Daughters. So sadly, they are not currently in Newbern. Job's Daughters, in fact, is not even in the state of North Carolina anymore.
Wow.
I was, when I was working with Job's Daughter, you're the associate Bethel guardian. A Bethel is what they call the group of girls. There were only 3 Bethels in Newbern. Not in Newbern, but in North Carolina. There was 1 in South Carolina. So we combined and made a grand Bethel of the Carolinas, and I was the grand associate Bethel guardian for the grand Bethel. But we sadly don't have the leadership now to put these groups back together.
Well, it seems that the younger people, there's just a lot. It's divided, the time and the.
It's not only the younger people; it's the older people too. We've got those cell phones that keep our attention 24/7.
So we've got to modernize and get to them. Say, hey, here's this. So what would be the principles? What would be, something that you could go over that you could share, for younger people that, this is what you really need to know. This is what you really need to focus on for yourself, for your life.
I don't know. I have a granddaughter, and she is strong in track and field and cross country. And in watching her develop through that, because she started in middle school and has progressed through high school and is now in college, I'm impressed with people in track and field. It's competitive, but mainly you're competing against yourself to improve your times or your height if you're high jumping, or your distance if you're broad jumping or throwing discus or whatever. But you're also competing for your team to make it so your team wins. However, it's not like football or baseball or basketball where it's one side against the other for a short period of time, and you're on a court or a field in desperate competition against each other. You're in track and field. It amazed me that the athletes that are not competing at that moment in a race or whatever other sport that they're doing right then, that they're in the center of the field, sitting down, talking to their friends, meeting other people, networking. It's just been amazing to me to watch that. And that's one of the great things of Masonry, is the opportunity to network. You meet new people in your lodge. You have the opportunity to visit other lodges in your area. You progress. If you join Scottish Rite or York Rite or the Shrine, you've got the opportunity to meet other groups, to visit other groups. That was one of the greatest things for me. I ended up being the Grand Commander of Knights Templar of the Grand Commandery of North Carolina, and in that job I got to travel around the state to all the other commanderies, the other York Rite bodies, meet more people. I even had the opportunity to travel to other states, because the Grand Encampment categorizes areas, groups of states, as departments. So I got to travel to other states in the department to visit them during their annual grand meeting and meet more people. And I've developed friendships that have lasted for years because of that. That's one of the greatest things that I've seen not only in my granddaughter in track and field, but also in masonry, is the opportunity to get out and network and meet more people.
Yeah, we definitely need to get out. After the COVID thing and then the lockdown, and people all isolated, and they get comfortable and they get used to it, and they forget, like assembling yourselves together, and that iron sharpens iron. But you mentioned something about not comparing yourself to others, but to yourself, like yesterday, beating your own score. That sounds a lot like something Jordan Peterson was saying. You don't want to keep comparing yourself to other people. He told a story about a guy that compared to was his roommate. He's like, "Oh, I can't get the grades. I'm not doing as well." And the punchline was his roommate was Elon Musk, and he just wasn't measuring up. But to comparing yourself to where you were yesterday, to continue to grow, to continue to mature, to continue to better yourself. And yeah, that's what masonry is all about, and that's what friends do for you.
That's right. That's another thing I've seen in masonry. Everybody doesn't have the same capabilities. Some are well spoken. Some are well read. Some have great memories to do the memory work that we have in masonry. But I've seen men, when I was young, I watched older men that didn't have confidence, weren't well spoken, but they went through the chairs, they became the presiding officer, they stumbled, but I've watched people improve over the years. And that's why I say this really is a great system for improvement, self-improvement.
With help.
With help.
Absolutely.
And watching and doing, that's where it comes from. The watching, the doing, the memory work. I've told master masons, with Newbern Rite, we usually try to go wherever there's a master mason being raised and give him a coin that on one side they can imprint the name of their lodge and the lodge number, and on the other side they can imprint the dates when they were initiated, passed, and raised. But another thing that we give them is a little flashlight and tell them that if they're looking for even further light in masonry, that flashlight will help them. Because on that flashlight is the name of the Newbern Rite bodies, the address, and the phone number. And call us, and we will give you the opportunity to progress, to improve yourself through masonry. But the only way to improve yourself is to participate. And this is just a great chance to participate 3 more times, because you got an opportunity in 3 more bodies to become a presiding officer.
Yes. Well, I was told you get out what you put in.
I've been told that too, and it is the fact. You're going to get out of something what you put into it, but
Just
you
anything.
put into it through participation.
Yeah, anything.
Anything.
So where did you first, now your family, when you first heard of masonry, was there a particular person? Was your family involved in masonry from early?
I was born in downtown Newbern on Broad Street.
Wow.
And was raised on Broad Street. I was raised 3 doors up from Sudan Temple. And as a child, and I'm talking 4, 5, 6 years old, the Sudan Temple is still there today, but in their parking lot, there was a house, a 2-story house, and I would go down there, and they'd let me in. That's probably where their offices were. But on the second floor, in all the bedrooms, there were 4 or 5 or more bunk beds. And I would go up there and I would take all the pillows off the bunk beds and I would use them for a landing spot to jump off of the top of the bunk bed. And I'd play there all day long. It was fabulous. But being 3 doors up from the Sudan Temple, they had their winter ceremonial every year. And at one time, downtown Newbern was a 2-lane road. Broad Street was. Then they made it 4 lanes. And when they made it 4 lanes, they did away with the grassy area between the road and the sidewalk. That grassy area is where my parents used to park their cars. But when they made it 4 lane, there was no place to park anymore, so they had to park in the backyard. And when they had the winter ceremonial, inevitably a Shriner would come park in our driveway, and my father would cuss him because he couldn't get his car in or out. But I've known, I knew Masons. My uncle was a Mason. I had a cousin that was a Mason. In fact, that's the person I asked about Masonry. Okay. Was my first cousin. And he got me a petition. I joined St. John's Lodge. And that cousin raised me, but he just passed away this past year.
Mm. That would, well, you know, that's why I'm doing these interviews so that we'll, you know, as long as YouTube lasts, we'll have a, you know, documentation. Before we get into the second section, is there anything else about Masonry or yourself you'd like to add to this?
I'm going to go back in history a little bit further.
Yeah.
When Newbern had 3 movie theaters at one time. One of them was Masonic Theater. That is the theater that's on the first floor of the building where St. John's Lodge is. And I remember they had their early morning movies every Saturday morning, westerns and things like that, where children would go to the theater. And I remember my mother would give my older sister, I have 2 older sisters, she would give my older sister 75 cents, and we would go to the movie. It was 10 cents to get in.
10 cents.
10 cents for a box of popcorn, and 5 cents for a Coca-Cola.
Wow.
So that was,
so
I had great memories of Masonry just through the Masonic Theater.
That reminds me of that National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Like, oh, a whole quarter. Like it was something. A whole quarter.
It was.
It was.
It was.
It was. And now $5 is nothing.
I used to do the same thing. My father had a business downtown. It was a tractor implement business for Farmall and International. And in the summertime, I would leave the house, go a block and a half, stop at a place called Mike's Cafe, and get 2 hot dogs and a Coca-Cola for a quarter. Then I'd go down to my father's store, pick up my cane pole. He'd give me a dime. I'd go buy a pound of shrimp and fish all day long. It was a great life.
What would you catch? What would you trade your shrimp for out there in the?
I'd mainly catch eels and gave them to the black people that were down fishing too. They wanted them. I didn't want them. I was just there to have fun all day long.
Just having fun.
Yeah, playing on the waterfront.
Catching.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine catching an eel. That would be exciting, huh?
Yeah. There was some big ones down there.
Beautiful. Well, you want to go right into the second section?
What's the second section?
I'd like to call it controversial.
Good luck.
You seem hesitant. Okay, so I start off with a question like, what is it in the world today that bothers you the most?
Oh, gosh.
Should I?
There are many things, but I try not to let things bother me.
Yeah, that's the best. Yeah, don't just stay away from it. Don't. Well, I don't know if it's the best,
Yeah,
but that's one way.
It's attitude.
Attitude.
And I try to have a good attitude. Usually it's the little bitty things that upset me. The big things don't tend to upset me because little things people have control over. Big things they don't.
That is good advice. I mean, if you what's that serenity prayer thing?
I don't know.
Well, to accept the things that we cannot change.
Yeah.
To have the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
But that's like when I meet people, they ask you, "How are you doing?" And I tell them, "Totally awesome." And it puts a smile on their face.
Well, I
And
say
it's a
better than
great
I
thing.
deserve. I say better than I deserve, and I get different answers.
That's just holding yourself down. You deserve a lot.
Well, I get that, but it's usually in reference, to original sin. Like I don't deserve eternal life, but I get it.
But you get it.
I've got it
Because you're
and
a believer in Jesus Christ.
That's it, and I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it,
None
and
of us
I'm
do,
living.
And all we can
None of
do
us do.
is ask forgiveness every day.
I'd love to, yeah.
And know that
Every
we're
day.
being forgiven because Jesus gave his life for our sin.
That's it. That's it. And that I'm looking right over there, and Knights Templar, it has a cross plus masonry equals Knights Templar.
That was the year I was Grand Commander. I had my name and address on one side of my business card, and I had that on the other side.
And that's really why I joined Masonry.
Yeah. We don't talk politics or religion in the lodge, but I'm finding that we do talk religion in the lodge. I'm reading a book by a brother, Robert, can't get his last name right, but it deals with scripture in Masonry. And he pulls out scripture in the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Apocrypha, which I wasn't really familiar with. The older you get, you still can learn. Every I want to say every degree and order that we do comes from a passage in the Older New Testament or the Apocrypha. Everything that I'm just amazed in reading this book and and getting more of the esoteric side of Masonry, because I'm a literal person. When I read something, if it says dog and cat, that's what I'm reading. If it, one of the things that I just recently read was talking about the man that had a vineyard, and he was hiring people to work his vineyard. He hired them early in the morning, but he needed more workers, so he went out at noon and hired some more workers. And then even at the 9th hour, he was hiring workers. And when it came time to pay them, they were all paid a penny. Well, that's what the workers at the beginning of the day had bargained for. And so,
or a denarius.
Whatever coin it was a penny of the realm. It was
it was a day's wage.
It was a day's wage.
It was a day's wage.
And in reading this book, of course, those that came early in the day, they were complaining about receiving the same thing that the person that had only come and worked an hour. But the author turned that around It's kind of like the vineyard, or the person that owned the vineyard that was hiring everyone is God.
Yeah.
And the vineyard is heaven. And because of Jesus Christ giving his life for our sins, God is letting you into heaven no matter whether you started believing in him early or at the last hour when you're dying and start calling God in his name. That you're still getting paid the same thing as those that have believed for a long time. You're going to heaven. And we're all looking forward to that.
And that was the analogy. Yeah. I mean, there's always a depth
Yes.
to get out of it. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And, God does things the way God does things.
Yeah.
And he doesn't need to explain it to us, but some people want an explanation.
It's just like I've always said that I have been blessed all my life. I was blessed with great parents. I want to say grandparents. I never knew my grandfather on my father's side. I didn't know I only knew my grandfather on my mother's side. I think he passed away when I was 4. But we lived in the house with my father's mother for the first 12 years of my life. She would get up and she would fix me French toast every morning. That's what I wanted, and she was willing to fix it, and it was just great for me. It was a great time in my life growing up in downtown Newbern with the parents I had, the 2 older sisters that I have. I have been blessed all my life. Now I have a fabulous wife. Been married 50 years. I have just been blessed all my life. And I was in that book, and it came to the 23rd Psalm, which I have said a million times. But it got down to the last verse. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house forever. Surely goodness and mercy, blessings. I have been blessed all of my life, and I look forward to being in the house of my Lord forever.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful, Fred. I really do appreciate you, and that makes a lot of sense to me. That you've been blessed your whole life, and you seek to share it with other people, and I appreciate you giving me the time to talk to you. Anything else?
No, I think you've gotten more out of me than most people get,
Well,
because I'm more of a listener.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. We're always trying to grow. Can you tell me about the fire in Newbern? And when they changed the name? Because I really don't understand they changed it from Newbern to Newbern.
Well, Newbern was settled by people from Bern, by Swiss Palatines, and they named it after Bern, Switzerland, which is spelled B-E-R-N-E. At one time, New Bern was spelled B-E-R-N-E.
With just an E on the end.
Yeah.
So after the fire,
I don't know when they changed it. It may have changed several times over the years.
They dropped the E.
The fire. My father was born in Newbern. My mother was not. She was born in Dover, which is about 20 miles west of Newbern. My father was born in 1905, and I want to say that the fire was in 1922. So he would have been around 17 years old. And it was also during the fire, there was the state, I think they were having a state football championship. So most of Newbern had left town to go to the state championship. There are 2 fire departments or organizations within Newbern. There's Atlantic Fire Department and Button. I think it's Button Fire Department. I think my father was a member of Button Fire Department, probably as he got older after his teens, became the fire chief because it was all volunteer. And it was downtown. There was competitions between the two organizations, who could be at the fire first, who had most people at the fire. But
so good not to have a monopoly on the fire department.
It was, and like I say, it was all volunteer back then. But I don't know when Newbern, the E got taken off or put back on. I just don't know.
Well, yeah, that was it. I didn't know. I knew they changed the name, but I thought there was maybe a U in there at one point. But no, that didn't make any sense. And dropping the E, well, I mean, my last name, they kind of added the E. Took it off the end, put it in the middle. But no, that really does clarify something. I've been wondering about that. Newbern's pretty good. It's
Newbern's a special town with two rivers, the Neuse and the Trent rivers. Because we have both rivers, it's just a touch warmer here than it is around us. So when it snows, it'll snow in Cove City 15 miles away or Vanceburg 20 miles away, but it doesn't snow in Newbern because of the warmth of the rivers.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And I always say that the South has everything, include a bunch of Yankees, but
no offense.
And when they come down here, they don't want to leave. And God bless them.
God bless them.
I've known some that have been here so long that they're starting to complain about the traffic.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's a good one. All right, Fred, I sure appreciate your time. And this will probably be our most popular one yet. Again, thank you for joining us. OPIN, this is 004.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome, Fred.